The message popped up like a ghost in the golden haze of my wedding sunset. You have been removed from Smith Family Corp. My heart stuttered as laughter echoed from the reception hall, my new husband's hand steady in mine. But those 4 empty chairs at the family table whispered a darker truth. They weren't late. They were gone. And as the sun dipped, erasing the day's forgiveness, I realized this was no accident. It was the first cut in a betrayal that would unravel everything I thought was mine. My name is Saladine Mercer, and at 31, I never imagined my wedding day would become the fuse for a family's implosion. The ceremony had just ended, the air thick with the scent of fresh lilies and the murmur of guests drifting toward the reception like leaves in a gentle breeze. Sunlight filtered through the venue's arched windows, casting that warm golden glow that makes even the sharpest edges seem soft and redeemable. My husband's fingers intertwined with mine, warm and reassuring, grounding me in the joy of the moment. But my phone vibrated insistently in my pocket, pulling at my attention like an unwelcome intruder amid the congratulations. I pulled it out, expecting another flood of well wishes, heart emojis, exclamation points, the digital confetti of love. Instead, a cold system notification stared back. You have been removed from Smith Family Corp. The words hung there, sterile and final, like a door slamming shut in an empty room. My pulse quickened, a flicker of confusion cutting through the haze of happiness. A mistake, surely. Someone's clumsy thumb slipping while trying to mute the endless pings. That group chat had been our lifeline for years. Birthdays announced with cake emojis no one really needed, holiday plans debated in endless threads, business updates slipping in alongside those awkward memes that fell flat every time. It was the pulse of our family, the Smiths, all funneled into one chaotic stream. But when I tapped to reopen it, the thread vanished. Poof! Erased, as if I'd never belonged. A chill crept up my spine, despite the warm afternoon light. I glanced toward the reception hall, where tables were set with pristine white linens and sparkling glassware. My eyes locked on the family table, 4 chairs, perfectly aligned, untouched, empty. My mother with her sharp opinions and endless fussing, my father always commanding the room, my brothers Mark and Caleb, one charmingly unreliable, the other quietly scheming. They should have been there, filling the space with their presence. The staff hovered nearby, glancing at their watches, asking politely if the family was delayed by traffic or some last-minute snag. My best friend sidled up, her whisper laced with concern. Are they stuck somewhere? I shrugged, forcing a smile that felt brittle, unwilling to let the doubt stain this perfect day like a spill of crimson wine on ivory silk. They had confirmed everything, not once but twice, online RSVPs, texts a month out, even bickering over outfits. Mother had turned it into a drama, insisting her dress wouldn't clash with the bridesmaids' soft pastels. Mark had begged to bring his girlfriend, and I'd said yes without hesitation. Caleb had been quieter, but he'd nodded along in the planning calls. They weren't just guests. They were woven into the fabric of the event. Their absence gnawed at me, deliberate and sharp, but I pushed it down, deep into that mental vault where uncomfortable truths hide until they can't be ignored. The photographer approached, camera slung over his shoulder, his voice cheerful but probing. Should we hold off on the family shots? Maybe they're just parking. I waved it off, my voice lighter than I felt. Let's give them a bit more time. But as the minutes stretched, the knot in my stomach tightened. We posed without them eventually, smiles frozen in place, the empty backdrop a silent accusation. My maid of honor leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. Something's off, isn't it? I whispered back. I don't know. Because in that moment, the space in my mind reserved for explanations was a vast, echoing blank. The joy of the day cracked just a little, a hairline fracture threatening to spiderweb out. It wasn't until the third day of our honeymoon that the fracture shattered wide open. We were in Napa, the rolling vineyard stretching out like a painter's dream, the air heavy with the earthy tang of fermenting grapes. My husband laughed, his eyes crinkling at the corners as I mangled the name of a particularly pretentious wine on purpose, just to hear that sound ripple through the tasting room. It was bliss, a bubble of newlywed escape. Idly, I scrolled through Instagram, thumb flicking through filters and feeds out of sheer habit. And there they were, all four of them, Mother, Father, Mark, Caleb, sprawled on a sun-kissed beach in Maui, clad in matching floral prints that screamed forced cheer. Cocktails glistened in their hands, skin flushed with sunburn and what looked like smug satisfaction. The caption sliced through me. The family is finally whole. I stared, the screen blurring as a hollow ache bloomed in my chest, not rage yet, but an emptiness, as if someone had carved out a vital piece and left only the echo of its absence. My husband noticed the shift in my expression, the way my face drained of color. He gently pried the phone from my fingers, his touch a lifeline, and pulled me closer without a word, giving me space to breathe until the words could form. I borrowed his phone. He was still in the group, untouched by their digital purge. My fingers trembled as I typed. Enjoy it while it lasts. I hit send, handing it back with a calm that surprised even me. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. A quiet declaration born from the void they'd created. That night, as he slept beside me, the cabin's wooden beams creaking softly in the wind, I opened my laptop. Smith & Rowe Logistics wasn't just my father's empire. It was my creation, forged from 6 years of sweat and innovation. I dragged it into the digital age, securing our largest contract ever, automating systems that stanched the bleed of human error. I'd implemented dual signature protocols for any transaction over $10,000, a hard-learned lesson from past disasters. Father barely understood the half of it, relying on my expertise like an invisible crutch. With deliberate clicks, I logged in and excised my name from the business registration. I shifted my shares into a frozen holding, immobilizing them. No fanfare, no warnings, just action, silent and swift. Then I locked the payroll account. No withdrawals without my approval. Payroll loomed that Friday, a ticking clock they couldn't ignore. I didn't utter a word. Let the quiet do the talking. I closed the laptop, the screen's glow fading like the last light of day, and slipped back into bed, the weight of what I'd set in motion settling over me like a shroud. The calls began the next morning, insistent vibrations pulling me from the fog of sleep. I watched the screen light up with familiar numbers, letting them ring into silence. They didn't deserve my voice, not after choosing my wedding day to vanish me. The panic built slowly, tentative at first, as if they doubted my resolve. By Friday, payroll stalled. Drivers bombarded supervisors with frantic queries. The warehouse manager fired off urgent emails that pinged into my still active inbox. I saw it all. The digital spine I'd built held firm, granting me eyes everywhere. But I responded to none of it. Instead, I brewed coffee, the rich aroma filling the cabin, and joined my husband on the porch. We watched the mist rise from the hills, tendrils curling like forgotten secrets, as if the world beyond was a distant dream. By noon, unknown numbers joined the fray, buzzing like angry bees. I ignored them too, knowing exactly who clutched those lines, those who profited from the status quo, scrambling as it crumbled. The panic didn't erupt like a bomb. It slithered in, hesitant and creeping, testing the edges of their certainty. That Friday morning, when the payroll wires should have flown out like clockwork, nothing moved. Drivers flooded the supervisor's lines with furious texts and calls, bills due, rent looming, families waiting. The warehouse manager's urgent email landed in my inbox like a flare. Payroll failed, urgent action required. I read it calmly, the words glowing on the screen, then closed the tab. My credentials still held the keys to every locked door I'd built. I could see the chaos unfolding in real time, a silent spectator to the storm I'd unleashed. I made another pot of coffee, the dark liquid swirling as I poured. My husband joined me on the porch swing, his arm draping loosely around my shoulders. The fog clung to the Napa Hills like a shroud, lifting slowly to reveal green rows of vines stretching into the distance. Everything felt suspended, peaceful, while somewhere far away, the empire I'd helped construct began to stutter. "You okay?" he asked softly, sensing the quiet storm inside me. I nodded, leaning into him. Just watching the view. By early afternoon, the unknown numbers started. One after another, they buzzed through, persistent, demanding. I let them go to voicemail, each unanswered ring a small victory. The first message played on speaker as we sat inside, the cabin's wooden walls amplifying the CPA's careful, professional tone. Richard, the man I'd barely spoken to in 6 years, unless disaster loomed. "Saladine, this is Richard from accounting. There are some questions from the bank regarding recent transactions. Timing issues. If you could call me back, I'd appreciate clarification." His voice stayed measured, but the undercurrent of alarm bled through every syllable. I didn't call. That evening, the knocking came. Not a gentle tap, not the casual rap of a neighbor. This was pounding, fists against wood, rhythmic and furious, the sound of someone who still believed they owned the right to enter. It went on for 20 solid minutes. I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, listening to the rhythm of desperation. My husband glanced at me, eyebrow raised. I shook my head, let him feel the weight of absence, the same hollow echo I'd carried since those empty chairs at the altar. When I finally opened the door, my father looked like a man who'd been dragged through thorns. Face flushed crimson, sweat beading along his hairline, jacket slung half on, as if he dressed in a blind panic. His eyes, usually sharp with command, were wild now, edged with something close to fear. He didn't greet me. No congratulations, no pretense of warmth, just one barked question. "What did you do?" I leaned against the doorframe, blocking the entrance, arms still folded. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. He hated silence. It stripped away his control. He tried to push past. I didn't budge. "You froze the damn payroll," he snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I met his gaze steadily. "Yeah, I know exactly what I've done." The admission threw him for a heartbeat. He recovered fast, words tumbling out in a rush of momentum. Drivers threatening to walk out, warehouse crew already gone, 2 major clients screaming about penalties for missed deliveries. The accountant couldn't even file basic reports because my login still controlled the system. Then he played what he thought was his ace. The IRS called this morning. They're reviewing 5 years of returns. 5. If you don't fix this, we're all going down. That all landed like a slap. It didn't include me anymore. Not the daughter erased from the family chat on her wedding day, not the bride replaced by a beach vacation and a smug caption about wholeness. I let the word hang there, then spoke quietly. All doesn't include me. His anger surged, a shield over the fear flickering in his eyes. He called me petty, accused me of torching everything we built, of acting like a spoiled child. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper, and let it drop to the floor between us like evidence in a trial. An old clause from a partnership agreement I'd signed years ago, buried in fine print, granting him override rights in cases of negligence or intentional harm. A bluff, but a clever one. Enough to make noise, buy time, drag things into court if he needed. You sabotage the company, he said, voice low and venomous. That's what this looks like. I didn't pick up the paper. Good luck proving that. He stood there a moment longer, breathing hard, then turned and stalked down the driveway without another word. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound final as a coffin lid. I locked it, not out of fear, but for closure. By Monday, his lawyer fired off a cease and desist, full of legalese threats. Tuesday, my own attorney responded with a meticulously documented counter. Every warning I'd sent over the years about financial discrepancies, every ignored email, every screenshot of unaddressed red flags. I hadn't hunted for dirt. I'd simply kept the receipts. My husband knew the broad strokes, the betrayal, the freeze, but not the granular details. We'd only just returned from the honeymoon. I wanted him to have a few untainted days before the mess bled into our new life. Wednesday brought the first text from my mother in months. Can we please talk? This is getting out of hand. No apology, no explanation, just that soft, familiar reach for control, as if I'd forgotten how she wielded guilt like a velvet glove. I left it unread. Thursday, the game shifted. Richard called me directly this time, voice hushed, urgent. Not from the office line, personal cell. He skipped pleasantries. My payroll freeze hadn't just delayed checks. It had interrupted a midstream transfer flagged by the bank's automated compliance system. The account belonged to a vendor for fleet software maintenance. The vendor didn't exist. Address? A mailbox drop in Nevada. Founding name? Caleb. The pieces snapped together with sickening clarity. Why Caleb had always hovered on the edges, never fully accountable. Why invoices shifted after my approvals. Why certain contracts bore my digital signature when I had no memory of them. Father had used my credentials as cover, betting on my loyalty, my busyness, my trust. Richard paused, then delivered the hammer. The IRS didn't just flag it. They've escalated to a criminal investigator. They're digging through 5 years. I hung up and sat on the porch steps, wind rustling through the trees like indifferent whispers. I could have walked away right then, let the fire consume them without lifting another finger. But one more safeguard remained. The backup server I'd built years ago for transparency, for exactly this nightmare. Every email, contract, approval, immutable, locked behind my private password, untouched. I hadn't deleted anything. I'd only sealed it. My husband stepped out, concern etched on his face. Everything all right? I looked up at him, the man who'd held my hand through empty chairs and hollow captions. We're past fixing it now, I said. He nodded, understanding more than the words conveyed. That afternoon, a text pinged from Aunt Jody. My father's younger sister, the one who'd always hovered on the family's periphery like a cautious shadow. Your dad's spiraling. IRS called again. Caleb hasn't slept in days. Your mom's trying to stay positive, which means she's in full denial mode. No pleas, no demands, just the quiet relay of fallout. It didn't spark satisfaction in me. It felt inevitable, like watching a house of cards finally catch the breeze it had been daring for years. That night, the knocking returned. Same heavy fist, same desperate rhythm. I knew it was him before I checked the peephole. He wore the same suit from the rehearsal dinner, now wrinkled and stained with travel sweat. Hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot and sharp with panic. He shoved a thick manila envelope against my chest the moment the door cracked open. "Read it," he growled. "You're not innocent in this either." I took the envelope without inviting him in. Inside, printed emails, chat snippets, approvals I'd signed years ago. Standard quotes, routine transactions, all ripped out of context to look suspicious. He leaned in close, breath hot and sour. "If the IRS sees these alone, they'll come for you too. We both know it." The threat hung there, crude and desperate. He thought fear would crack me open, make me fold like I always had before. I met his gaze without flinching. "Good luck. You altered the numbers, not me." His voice dropped, almost pleading now. "Come back. We can clean this up together. It's still a family business. Missing the wedding, that was a mistake. We can move past it." The mention of the wedding, casual, belated, as if one acknowledgement could erase the empty chairs, the Maui photo, the caption that declared them whole without me, ignited something cold and final inside. "You burned that bridge," I said. "Now you're mad the fire's spreading." He stood frozen for a long beat, then turned and walked away down the dark driveway, footsteps fading into the night. I locked the door again, the click echoing like punctuation. The next morning, an email arrived from the company's legal counsel. Father was attempting a panic sale of shares to raise emergency cash. He couldn't. My name remained tied to every major asset, every critical control. The investigation loomed larger now, a shadow he couldn't outrun. Then something unexpected cut through the noise. An email from Uncle Grant, my father's estranged younger brother, the one family lore painted as the reckless mismanager who'd been bought out and banished years ago. His message was brief. "I've been waiting for someone to finally see it. Can we meet? I have everything." Against every instinct screaming caution, I agreed. We met at a quiet diner 2 towns over, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like regret. He looked older, worn thin by time, but his eyes held no bitterness, only quiet resolve. Before the waitress even set down our mugs, he slid a thick manila folder across the scarred tabletop. Inside, bank transfers, internal emails, a buyout agreement from 8 years back. The mismanagement story was fiction. Father and Caleb had been siphoning revenue through a shell company registered under Mother's name, flipping company trucks back to themselves at inflated prices, skimming profits in the shadows. When Grant discovered it, they paid him handsomely to disappear and stay silent. He'd kept every document anyway. I scanned the pages, heart steady now, then photographed everything twice and backed it up to encrypted drives. "Thank you," I said simply. He nodded. I just wanted someone to know the truth. The next day, the company's legal team requested an urgent mediation call. Buy me out in exchange for server access. I ignored it. That afternoon, my husband came home from a quick errand downtown, expression troubled. Ran into one of the old warehouse guys. Your father's telling everyone you sabotaged the company out of spite, that you're unstable, bitter, lashing out. I laughed, a short, sharp sound, because by Sunday, the IRS hadn't just frozen business accounts, personal ones too. Father's, mother's, Caleb's, all locked. The alert came while we ate dinner at the small wooden table, forks pausing midair. I set mine down slowly and smiled. The house of cards hadn't fallen. It had imploded. Monday morning brought 33 missed calls. No voicemails, just raw panic in the silence between rings. At noon, an official IRS email requested the archived records only I could unlock. I didn't reply yet. Let them sit in the uncertainty a little longer. That evening, my mother appeared alone on the porch. No father, no lawyer, just her, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I let her in but stayed standing. Distance mattered. She launched into a rehearsed apology, voice trembling. She claimed she hadn't known the full plan, that skipping the wedding wasn't her idea. Father had convinced her it would be less tense if they took the trip. She said she'd tried to call. I reminded her she could have tried harder. Then she pivoted. They were in real trouble now. Mortgage payments stalled, credit cards maxed, groceries a question mark. Father was unraveling. Caleb had suffered a breakdown. Everything we'd built together teetered on collapse. And then the line that chilled the room. We know about the emergency fund. My spine went rigid. That account was private, mine and my husband's, set up years ago after I'd learned the hard difference between planning and bleeding dry. Separate from the business, untouchable. How? I asked. She hesitated. Father had dug up old joint authorization records from years back, convinced the money was company earned, that I wouldn't have it without their empire. She begged, actually begged, then played the final card. If I didn't help, Father would go public. Claim I doctored books, orchestrated the collapse to punish them, destroyed my own name in the process. I laughed again, not from humor, but from the sheer desperation of it. I have no intention of stopping the investigation. The only reason I haven't sent the full archive yet is because I wanted to see how far you'd fall. She stared, stunned, then left without another word, the screen door slapping shut behind her like a period. The next morning, I compiled everything: emails, backups, transaction logs, Uncle Grant's folder. Attached it all to an IRS email with one line: full archive attached. Then I closed the laptop, took my husband's hand, and we went out for brunch as if it were just another ordinary Sunday. 3 days after I hit send on that archive, the investigation shed its rumor skin and became news. Not a screaming headline, not yet, but enough to ripple through local circles. Family-owned logistics firm under federal audit for multi-year tax irregularities. No names printed, no photos splashed, but anyone who'd ever loaded a truck for Smith & Rowe or signed a contract knew exactly who it pointed to. My phone began lighting up with messages from former coworkers, vendors, even a few distant cousins who'd stayed neutral for years. Some expressed shock, others quiet relief. A handful whispered they'd always suspected something rotten behind the polished facade. I read them, then let most go unanswered. This wasn't a discussion anymore. It was consequence. That same evening, my mother returned, alone again. She stood on the porch steps, the porch light casting long shadows across her face, making her look smaller, more fragile than I'd ever seen. Purse gripped tight, knuckles white. I opened the door but didn't invite her past the threshold at first. She asked to come in. I stepped aside, let her sit on the edge of the couch. I remained standing, arms loose, but posture clear. This space was mine now. She started with the apology she'd rehearsed in the car, words tumbling out too smoothly. She swore she hadn't known the depth of it, that the Maui trip was Father's idea to avoid tension, that she'd regretted it the moment the plane took off. She said she'd tried reaching out afterward. I cut in gently. You could have tried harder. I saw the photo, the caption. The family is finally whole. That wasn't subtle. She flinched as if struck, then recalibrated, voice dropping to that familiar pleading register. They were drowning now. Mortgage notices piling up. Credit cards declined at the grocery store. Father barely slept, pacing the house at night. Caleb had shut down completely, wouldn't leave his room, wouldn't eat. Everything they'd built, the company, the name, the life, was crumbling. Then she circled back to the one thing she thought might still move me. We know about the emergency fund. Your father thinks it's company money, that you built it because of the business. Please, Saladine, just enough to get through this month. The room felt suddenly colder. That fund was sacred, private, separate, earned through years of side consulting and careful saving after I'd first spotted the cracks in their accounting. It belonged to me and my husband, a quiet safety net for the life we were building without shadows. How did he even know it existed? I asked. She looked down at her hands. Old joint records. From years ago, when we briefly shared access for convenience. He assumed wrong, I said. That money is ours. You left me on my wedding day, erased me when it suited you, remembered me only when the ground started shifting under your feet. I owe you nothing. She begged then, real, broken begging. Tears welled, voice cracked. When pleading failed, she reached for the last weapon. If you don't help, your father will go public. He'll tell everyone you doctored the books, that you planned this collapse to hurt us, that you destroyed your own reputation just to punish the family. I let out a breath that was almost a laugh, dry, humorless. Let him try. I've got timestamps, warnings, every ignored email. The only reason the full archive isn't already deeper in their system is because I wanted you all to feel the slow burn first. She stared at me, stunned into silence, mascara streaking faintly. Then she stood, gathered what dignity remained, and walked out. The screen door closed softly behind her this time. No slam, just quiet surrender. The next morning, I double-checked the submission. Every file, every attachment, Uncle Grant's documents included. Sent it with no additional commentary. Then I shut the laptop, turned to my husband in the kitchen, and said, "Brunch?" He smiled, grabbed his keys, and we drove to the little spot overlooking the valley, ordering eggs and coffee like the world hadn't just tilted another degree. Weeks passed in a strange, suspended calm. The probe widened quietly at first. More subpoenas, more frozen lines. Lawyers' threats arrived in my inbox like junk mail. Breach of fiduciary duty, emotional distress claims, civil suits threatened. I blocked the senders without opening most. The company's portal still let me in one last time. I deleted my profile. Email, access logs, everything. Not out of spite, just because the chapter had ended. We moved 3 months later. Different state, different sky, mornings that started with birdsong instead of dread. I began taking on private consulting gigs, logistics systems, efficiency audits, the work I loved without the poison of family ties. My husband returned to teaching, his days filled with lesson plans and teenagers' questions. The emergency fund stayed untouched, a quiet promise we kept to ourselves. I thought distance would draw a clean line under it all. I was wrong, but not in the way I'd feared. One ordinary afternoon, an email arrived from the IRS. Not a demand, not another request. A formal thank you from a senior agent. Stiff, professional language acknowledging the extraordinary value of the records I'd provided. The archive had uncovered not just the fake vendors and inflated invoices, but a web of offshore accounts tied to fraudulent payments. Accounts linked to names I recognized from childhood holiday dinners and business meetings. 2 of those associates had already fled the country. The message closed with a line that stopped my breath. "We will be issuing a subpoena for your testimony. Based on the documentation, we believe you were unaware of these activities, but your cooperation will assist in building the broader case." I read it twice, then closed the laptop and sat in silence, realizing the betrayal had grown far larger than one family's dinner table. This was a machine that had fed on silence for years, and silence had finally shattered. Later that day, my husband brought in the mail. Among the usual envelopes sat one thick, unmarked, hand-delivered, no stamp, no return address. Inside, a rambling letter from Caleb and a small flash drive. His words were messy, apologies in jagged bursts, panic in others. Father had lost control long ago. Caleb had been pressured into setting up the shell accounts. Mother knew more than she'd ever let on, but stayed quiet out of terror. He was sorry about the wedding. Knew forgiveness might never come. But if the drive helped balance things, maybe someday I'd understand. I didn't know if I believed the remorse, but I believed data. I plugged the drive into a spare laptop. It was a complete dump. Emails, voice memos, spreadsheets, even video clips. One recording captured my father on a call, laughing with someone overseas. She signs whatever I put in front of her. Another showed him coaching Caleb on splitting payments to dodge reporting thresholds. Methodical, calm, practiced. Not sloppy greed, calculated theft. I forwarded the entire contents to my IRS contact with 3 words: one more gift. That night, we sat on the new porch, watching the sky deepen from gold to indigo. No words needed. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was excision, cutting away the rot so the rest of my life could finally breathe. The investigation widened further. Lawyers retreated. The business went dark. No press releases, no denials, just absence. My parents' names vanished from community lists, charity boards. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Finished carrying secrets that weren't mine. Finished earning love through utility. Finished waiting for people who'd already chosen themselves. People sometimes ask if I miss them. I answer honestly. I miss the family I believed in. The one that would have filled those empty chairs, no conditions attached. That version never existed. What did exist was leverage, expectation, and silence. Once I stopped feeding it, the whole structure collapsed under its own hollow weight. The last thing I sent to the IRS was confirmation I'd testify when called. After that, I closed the book for good. New home, new work, new life. One that no longer required me to disappear so others could feel whole.